Hey, do we need to make a table? So that
No.
you won't reach. We're gonna use the camera, right?
You have perfect mise en scene now.
So this camera, that speaker not working correctly.
You just turn it on. Just do that. I think you're good. You didn't move anything, right?
I did, saw some setup from yesterday.
Yeah, it should work.
That's what it's probably connected there.
Yeah, it's probably just. They'll grab us. Especially if it's us three. I don't think we're. It's cold.
Huh?
It's cold in here.
So it's okay.
And we don't take it out. Say, thanks, my mom said when they said that.
There's two things I noticed in common. Groceries and.
I get along with my mom too. She's very similar.
Hey,
You like the
Carmen's
groceries and
sisters here.
Yes. That's fine.
It's called water. So we need to water.
Okay. So we have lots to cover on the agenda. Most of it's gonna be focused on some of the actions from this flip chart. I think we've got a good base. But I wanted to cover some things. Let's go over the open action items first. Did you have a meeting with Vita or FEMA?
FEMA.
Okay. We were going to see if VDM might fund flip charts in the future, Javier. Have you had a meeting with them and contacted them about that?
I haven't since we were talking about the grant.
Yeah, okay. We probably should, and of course, I won't be there, so I don't know what you guys are gonna do. But it would be nice if we could partner with VDM to get these at the state level. And that's a long-term goal. But if we didn't have to fund the printing, you know, like I told you, in Alaska, you can get, I think, 4 copies for free, and then you have to pay for them. So that means all of our sister small communities could do one for themselves and have to then pick up the cost for printing. So it's something to follow up on.
You can put it as an ongoing action item.
Yeah, that's what it's on. I just open action items. Starlink, Ruth isn't here to investigate Starlink as a communications backup. So she was gonna do that, so we'll wait till she comes, hopefully next time. P cards. We talked about this at council, and I still haven't gotten any response from the P card people, but I don't think it's necessary to be part of a P card system. I really just think we need those Visa cards for our officers. I'm gonna try to do a write-up and then run it by Chief Jenkins, and then we'll bring it to the next work session at the council, okay? So I'll take that action and do the write-up, because the mayor said last time, why don't you do a write-up and bring it up at the work session, and then we'll talk about it and vote on it.
And then my view is if there isn't anything special. Anything up and beyond from what another plastic card would give you, be it like a, I know they don't call it a gift card, but like a, whatever, temp card or one of our credit cards, then.
Prepaid card or something.
Yeah. Then I don't see too much of a concern. At some point, I need to make a credit card policy. I think that was a good thing we saw in last.
Yeah, well, okay, so what I think, I wasn't sure if you were doing that or the chief was doing that, because it's for his officers. Do we need one for the town?
I was gonna do one for the town.
Okay.
Cause I think, to the point, kind of like some of our emergency preparedness, this is now just diving into the town council. I think you could do one overarching to make it easy.
Yeah.
He's looking for a policy, so maybe we can just cut some of the work rather than.
Yeah, I mean, if you do one for the town, then all he has to say is you have to abide by town policy for handling credit cards. And that is the umbrella.
Yeah.
So if you could do that, would be great. And we should be able to just find something and copy it.
Yeah.
I mean, Albemarle County must have something, or UVA or somebody,
Yeah, that's where he was going
right?
first, so. I gotta look back around, but after the meeting, we talked about it, said, hold off, let me see if I can find something,
Okay,
save some time for everyone.
double back with him and I,
Yeah.
but we should have a policy. It'd be nice to bring back, if I can bring up the write-up just for what we want the Visa cards for.
Mhm.
Then you can do the draft policy, we can submit them as one sort of group.
Yeah, in tandem.
Yes,
So,
right, exactly. Local relationship with gas station for fuel and with Rite Aid for critical medication. You
So,
did approach Gordon, right, for the fuel stuff?
so I'll look back with him, cause that was maybe a week or two before we met last.
Yes, right.
And then I sent Brad the information, asked him, hey, if you could reach out on the pharmacy, so he's looking at making a list and everything.
Okay, so, we need to double back with both those parties. And make sure that these things are in place, Javier.
is that,
London. Right, or is it Loudon?
this one, the other,
Brad London, I think.
Can't be too far. Okay, thank you.
All right, and then we talked about using the fuel cache of the county fire department.
Mhm.
Now that the lawsuit is settled,
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't matter. I think the rescue spots feels very different from it.
yeah,
And the police department works relatively well with the county.
right. So,
I'll loop back on.
yeah, it might be a good opportunity to reach out and partner with them. All right, we talked about conducting a survey of town resources that we could tap into the event of emergency, like. How many EMTs do we have, or people with, nurses do we have, or something like that? We talked about doing a general survey potentially with the E911 signs that went out.
Mhm.
Did the E911 communique go out yet?
No.
You said you had a draft of that, did you
yeah,
give that?
you sent it out, fire, right?
Well, you sent out the ones with properties that didn't have any number,
You sent the fire out, right?
Yeah,
the whole town?
but that was for the ones that are not delinquent, but not in compliance. What you're asking is about just a general flyer.
That's right. Did you put together a general flyer?
Yeah.
Can you print that out?
We have an extra copy in your desk.
Can you just print it out right now? And then we talked about getting in touch with the pastor council for maybe using them as communication nodes.
Yes, so I talked to them last Thursday, maybe.
Okay,
Or I should ask them who's lead.
And I gave him a heads up, what I thought might be useful. I gave him the context, we were thinking about, hey, we've seen previous instances, we started talking. And they were like, oh, well, who, you know how conversations go, it flows, and then we go, hey, who would we contact in X situation? I'm like, perfect, that's why we have an EPC. So I pointed out, it's like, maybe having a representative of the pastors council attend one of these meetings. And then they get an overarching view of what we're asking for here, and then kind of build that relationship back, because they realized that they had some of the questions that we had in this meeting reflective. So it's like, from something as small as, hey, what would be our contact list, like we've talked in the last 2
Right.
meetings, or to, hey, how do I get informed what the siren means, or who would I talk to about evacuation plans, et cetera, like all the things wrapped around it. So I was gonna loop back with you guys and see if I could just send an email, connecting somebody on EPC, me, and the pastors council, and then inviting them to whatever feels like an appropriate meeting. I think the most realistic thing would be to maybe get 1 or 2 of the pastors down here.
Yeah.
Just like logistics wise.
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm just gonna hit send on the email between both parties.
okay, that sounds great.
But they seemed that it started clicking once I started talking to them. It's like, oh yeah, this is how we kind of built the bridge. a lot of the questions that have come up here and then when we met last week.
And then, the chief was looking at relationships with Buckingham County and Fluvanna County. For MOUs and things like that for emergency preparedness, do you know if he's good?
I haven't mentioned to him since.
Okay, chief doing. Status. I'll reach out to him. Okay, so that's it on the open actions that I had, the big ones. Okay, so what I wanted to do today is start to go through, if you recall, do you have the printouts or do I have the printouts, John?
Not much.
Here. Okay, so two things for you. I've asked Jack to,
Get my draft for this.
no, I wrote on.
You gave me, I asked one, so I'll grab mine.
Can you grab yours?
I have mine in mine too.
Alright, should I print out, let me just print out a new one.
I'm going to print every draft, sign you.
I have a previous one.
So what I've asked Jack to do is work with you on this contact list. Remember I said I was gonna create a spreadsheet of all the contacts that we had identified as assets in our last discussion, right? So we had 3 sections, right? The threat categorization, which we have 7. The assets that the town could use to deploy in the event of said threats, right? And then the response to those threats using the assets, right? So that was our 3-step process. So this is, okay. Yeah, so, these, I've asked Jack to work with you to get all this contact information.
So that's my draft.
Because that's gonna go into this flip chart, so that anybody that needs to know has all that contact information in the event of an emergency.
Okay.
And we would use those contacts for different things at different times, right? If there's no communications failure, we wouldn't need that person with communication, but if there was, the contact would be in, okay? So, so that's kind of an action to work on that contact list. Let me put that.
I think this is doable. Yeah.
So the one, these 2 drafts I have behind that one is from 2022. So that's the original list I had started.
So Jack had one, I have one, and they need to be reconciled.
Yeah.
So he has some that I don't have, and I have some that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And some of them may be open out here, like, let's say, for example, the pet evacuation. Right, we may not have anybody identified for that, but we need to get that in place. Okay, so if there's a TBD, it will need to be filled in over
So
time.
mine is highlighted in yellow.
Okay. All right. So let's go over then the response, right? So, let's see.
One just power on this like that's.
Yeah.
Or on whatever.
Okay, so here is where we started, right? The incidents covered, right, those were our 7. This column has the assets that we identified through our exercise, and now we're working on the response. Okay, so in looking at the template that I have for this kind of flip chart, this flip chart is in 2 sections, right? The first section, what I'm envisioning, is all in red, and these are general information and those basic steps that you do regardless of incident. Okay. The second will be threat specific and will be color coded. Okay, like we talked about in there. So, for example, what did I have here? Okay, red would be the color red on this first section, they'd all be red, and that would be general tabs and information, right? Then these would be color coded. Green would be severe weather, right? Yellow would be, the next one. What is this? Communications failure. Okay, so they be color coded by that. Okay? So in the red, we have things like the community planning team, right? So who are all the contacts? There's a plan distribution list. Who has the plan and what's their role? So Greg would have it for the police department. Tim Carr would have it because he's the levy superintendent. Tim Kersey would have it because he's the fire coordinator. Jack would have it because he's the CERT coordinator. The mayor would have it because he's the mayor. You would have it, etc. And then we have regional contacts like Gene Stewart for VDM Region 3, John O'Frandy for Albemarle County, yada, yada, yada. So all that contact information would be there for partners, okay? The next section would be so that's the distribution list, the incident command system. So who is involved in any incident? There's a chart in here that gives like the FEMA ICF structure. That's from FEMA, we're not gonna change that, okay? They identify roles and responsibilities. So Jack and I are working on trying to identify who we think are in those roles right now. And that would mean if you have to enact the ICS structure during an emergency, these are the leads, these are our partners. Okay, so that's in the red. So now let's think of those general things that you would do in any case, right? So the first section here, which I like, is if we had advance warning. So you're sitting as the ICS liaison, right? If we have advance warning, Jack alerts you saying, hey, huge ice storm coming in for the area. What do we do? Right? So let's think about together what the immediate actions we would take to prepare. So for example, in this template, the immediate actions would be 1, to assess the situation, size up the pending situation, assess the risks, and review the local plans, your flip chart, right? Notify your partners is the second step. Notify your ICS leaders, the local entities, Albemarle, Buckingham, and Savannah, if applicable. Say, hey, this is coming in, everybody's on alert, this is what we're doing. And notify the regional entity if applicable, so VDM or whomever, right? Or if you need to contact VDM directly, or if you need to go through like Randy's office or something like that. But you may even want to reach out if you have a personal relationship with them. We got a big thing coming down. I'm looking at it. By 4 o'clock tomorrow, I'm going to make an assessment on whether this is a real emergency or it's going to bypass us. Right, so everybody generally gets on alert. The third action under this template is to keep everyone safe. Some of the sub bullets are takes actions to minimize risk to life, health, and safety. Notify ICS leaders. We may want to, this is a good thing, to identify any at-risk population that we know of. And this may require registration. So let's say late-term pregnant women, people with medical conditions. When we send out that skills survey, we may want to put a question of, do you want to register anybody with a specific
That's what I was thinking.
health condition? Because then we have a list of people about, if we have an emergency, these people are the highest risk population. I don't know how others do that, but it might be good to think about that. Secure our critical infrastructure, communications, power, water, that kind of thing. So we would need to put our partners on alert, right? And then ensure critical vehicle and equipment are fueled. So at this point, you would reach out to the fuel contact, right, who has the cash and say, hey, storm coming, make sure, I'm gonna make an assessment at 4 o'clock tomorrow. But make sure, scan on alert that a fuel cache is in place, right? So not do it, but I may pull the trigger, so just put them on alert. And then check the status of critical infrastructure and resources. So you might reach out to Brightspeed and say, hey, we've got this incoming, get your team on alert, I'm gonna call you if we have communications problems, blah, blah, blah.
Same as the.
Right, same thing with, yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, make sure to check with Chief Jenkins that his officers have the cars, that they're on alert, who's his number two, those kinds of generic things.
Yeah.
And then inform everyone else, so leaders, responders, and critical personnel. The mayor, one of the ICS things that we don't have in place is a communications liaison.
Yeah.
If we had that, if public relations or whatever, we would alert them to say, hey, the media gets involved or whatnot. It may be a media person,
Yeah.
right? And then give clear information or desired actions and warnings, right? So that's what we just went. Hey guys, I'm gonna pull the trigger at 4 o'clock. Make sure if you hear from me that you're ready to go. Right? So this is all if we have advanced warning. Is there anything in there that needs to be more specific? Because I'm gonna tailor this a little bit, because their stuff is pretty generic. But I'm gonna tailor it a little bit, but does that make sense on what you would do?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because there seems to be a clear direction.
Right, so if,
I would see what is put together and then see any details.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so the next section under those time considerations is in the first 4 hours, what do you do? So the first section is if we have advanced warning, do these things. In the first 4 hours, incident hits, what do you do? Right? So you're gonna size up the situation. Alert your ICS contacts, medical, public safety, fire, and others. What other immediate things would we need to do? This says begin search and rescue as necessary. That would be on the part of fire and rescue, I guess, right?
Be under fire and rescue plus PD.
What else?
That's in the packet. No, not the.
That's not-
first off, but anyway.
Oh, let me see what page we're on.
I don't know which one,
No, no, look at it.
I told you,
Well, the guy said it would,
do that,
donkey. Okay, so here's the. First 24 hours. First 12 hours. So they break it up by hourly. Here's the first 4 hours, but you can't really see it because of the overlay.
Yeah.
So the first 4 hours, there's, let's see, how many actions here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 actions with sub-bullets. So what do we do immediately? And it says, size of the situation, alert your ICS contacts. Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I'm calling it an emergency. I'm now sending out to the ICS people. These are my immediate emergency response team. We are officially under emergency procedures, right? So that's fuel cache gets alerted, PD gets alerted, whatnot, right? Begin search and rescue as necessary. When do we consider evacuation?
it depends on the situation,
I know, begin search and rescue, but that seems a little early.
that's like recovery, right?
Yeah, so what do we call that? Begin,
If it's advanced warning, we have things on the back pages, and then one we're under the bus.
well, if we go back during that first 4 hours, then should we consider evacuation? In the first 4 hours? So if it looks like it's gonna hit and there's a 80 to 90% chance we're gonna have an ice storm and it's gonna knock out power. We should consider evacuation procedures at that point, right? So consider, what do I say? Consider evacuation.
For 4 hours.
Yeah, I know, but what do I say, what do I call it? Consider evacuation. Alert, I guess?
You put that under immediate.
I put it in the first 4 hours. If you, no, I put that if you have advance warning, right? Consider evacuation. So if there's an 80 to 90% chance it's an ice storm, severe temperatures, you've got to consider the evacuation procedures, which would be in a separate tab in a red section. Right, so where's my flow chart? Yeah, right, so somewhere in here, it would say evacuation. This is shelter or evacuation procedure, shelter procedures. It would have something like that, that you would go to say, okay, when do I pull the trigger on that? Who do I call? Right? So consider evacuation alert status. Okay, let's go back to the first 4 hours. So the first 4 hours were beginning our response. Javier, you have pulled the trigger. We are now under official alert, right? So just like at the state level, the governor issues, what do they call that? State of emergency, right? You've just issued state of emergency for the day.
Evil player emergency.
Okay, where is it? Okay, so before that, initiate local, what do we call it?
Evil
Joe?
player emergency.
Local area emergency. procedures. Okay, so we will call it a local area emergency. So you're gonna pull that at 4 o'clock, and we're just, just.
No.
As an example. Begin search and rescue, I don't like begin search and rescue, that's not your responsibility.
Your response.
You're not alerting, ICS contacts, at this point, what are you doing to the ICS? You're implementing ICS procedures. No, when he first,
You activate the EOC.
huh?
You activate the EOC.
That's it. That's the situation and activate EOC. Alert your ICF contacts, initiate the local area emergency procedures. And that's about it, right? What else does he have to do, Jack? Anything?
He alerts the county.
That's part of the ICS contact, isn't it?
Is it where do you check it at?
Where's the ICS structure?
Here.
Well, it's not in our packet.
Seem to know it's Jack.
I would say activate, not alert. Activate ICF contacts. ICF.
You know, be on. What do you call it? It's a certain word instead of contact to be. There's another word I could think about.
You're gonna activate the Emergency Operations Center. Declare a local,
I think it's the local emergency first, then activate
that's what I'm doing, emergency,
operations center.
declare a local emergency. Activate your emergency operations center. So now the town office is your emergency operations center, right? So this is the hub. Activate your ICS partners, so medical, public safety, fire, search, everybody in that ICS structure gets activated at that point. You're gonna send out a broadcast message to say, we are now under a local emergency, prepare accordingly. So they have their own procedures, right? You don't control that, but you're the one that puts it, activates it. And initiate local area emergency procedures, so that's done collectively, right? They have theirs, you have yours. Now, the reverse may be true, Javi, right? They may tell you, this is now an emergency, but they have to know there's a handshake there.
Yeah.
Chief of police calls you, or Kersley calls you and say, hey, this is now an emergency, pull the trigger. You're gonna, again, look at alerting all of your ICS partners. Okay, county people, and say, we are under a local town emergency. Okay, now, that's the first step. The second step is to gather resources, right? Contact regional entities, mutual aid partners, and the state if necessary. What about finance? Track response costs for possible assistance. So if it's big enough, what do we do? Do you know?
Me,
No, anybody, not just.
I know that county will just get something like president, like a federal disaster from state.
So, yeah.
So you have to track the costs.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
with Melody, you have to make sure if we're spending any money, let's say the heat gets knocked off, or we need to put something, we need to have jam work overtime or something like
Yeah.
that. You are gonna have to make sure you track all of your financial costs.
Yeah.
Because there's a chance that we could get reimbursed by the state.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you would say like treasurer and town clerk. For us, it'd be easy enough to track. It's a bigger question out here is, usually like counties from what I can see is, at least from one of the tabletop exercises, is that they have some kind of authorization, so
Mhm.
say. We need to start renting something, I don't know, like you
Right.
rent lights for
Right.
something. And of course, that wasn't an expected budget item to rent, floodlight for a parking lot.
Right,
For
exactly,
or something,
right,
you know where I'm going,
yeah,
so.
but you just have to make sure you track those costs separately.
That's what I would put as just treasurer and town clerk. And then. I would just use the language you have there.
Okay, so I'm gonna say clerk to track response costs for possible financial assistance.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think we have to identify assets to be deployed. So we have a list of assets here, and we also have assets that are, these are people. We have assets that are things and places, right? Evac center, yeah, right, first border down there, but then even the school, if we need to, et cetera. So you have to identify which ones you think you're gonna need. in those first, what do we say, 4 hours? Are we still in the first 4 hours? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, first 4 hours, begin response. So identify the assets to be deployed, recall emergency personnel, or just activate emergency personnel, contact your regional entities, mutual aid partners in the state. We don't do that though, right? The county does that.
Yeah.
And then clerk to track response costs. The third step is keeping everyone safe. And some of the actions that are here are secure incident scene and minimize hazards. Okay, so, let's say there's some trees down or road work or things like that where we have to close the town. You're gonna make sure that the scene is secure. Now, most likely that would fall under like Chief Jenkins, but you have to be informed, hey, Route 6 and 20 intersection is closed in town because of flooding.
Yeah,
Right.
we're rerouting, there's.
We're gonna reroute stuff. You just have to make sure that handshake is between you and the chief of police, right? Work closely on shelter evac procedures. This is what they have. Work with clinic and regional health corporation to develop strategy for at-risk groups. Identify evacuation routes away from harm. That should already be done, right? We should have evacuations routes based on zoning, right? Yeah, so it's more like activate, not identify.
Yeah, to say you'd have one or two. Or,
Right.
yeah,
So there's critical areas for weather, right? We have for flooding, right, the red zone. Right? And then there's not so critical, right? We have to say, okay, critical is gonna evacuate. This side of section is gonna go to Sylvan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
This section.
From what I understand, the fire department, everybody go Valley Street up.
so like towards the end.
But what if that section is flooded? They
Then
can't go back the street.
obviously goes gate floodgate too. The
Right.
floodgate goes, everybody goes that,
You go up Poplar.
Yeah,
The
they have to
floodgate
go
goes.
up Poplar.
if the East Main Street floodgates, that goes, everybody has to go.
Oh, yeah, or if you're on the inside, right?
Yeah.
But if you're on the outside,
That's
on
Van
the
County.
Savannah side,
That's
doesn't
Van
matter,
County.
it's still Scottsville.
I suppose it's Savannah.
But that's what I'm saying, Jack, is the evacuation route. Those folks are gonna go that direction. The people inside are gonna come this direction, if they can.
Yeah.
If it's flooded, they'll have to go up Poplar and come around. And at that point, would you want them to keep going out of town?
I don't know.
You should probably clarify that factor.
That's what I think in the summer, we should get all the departments together, all of our ICS, all community partners, and have a tabletop exercise to go through this and say, okay, I'm gonna activate the evacuation procedure. What happens? And so Kersley can say this, or whoever's sitting in the chief chair. Tim Carr can say this, VDOT can say this, what they're doing, we're all on the same page. So I think we should schedule something for the summer, like maybe August.
Yeah.
To go through these and just run a tabletop exercise. Now, does the Red Cross do we have to coordinate with them to open and supply shelters?
I believe so.
And then we have to notify the residents. So that's either by the siren, who makes the decision whether to activate the siren?
That's the car.
The car.
But he's the levy superintendent.
No, it's just,
What if it's not levy? What if it's just all the power and heat is out? Are we gonna siren people
No, I think we only have it set up.
for floods?
For flood, yeah.
Okay, but then how do we notify people?
Yeah.
Right, you're not gonna have power for the next, at least minimum 3 days. You
Oh.
talk to your you talk to your contact, right, at the power companies, and they say, we've got Charlottesville, UVA, and Crozet to get up first, we're not gonna get to you for at least 3 to 4
Yeah.
days. Right, how do you notify? You're gonna notify your ICS people, this is the status, but how do we notify residents? Right, this is where that alerts, that ECC alert system would come in super handy, right? Because they could subscribe to that channel and get an alert to say, hey, we are now under a local declared emergency, a town emergency. This is the status, be prepared to be without heat or communications for at least 3 days.
Yeah.
Right, so you have to have some way to notify the residents or businesses. Especially those at risk.
So you would have. In some way, well, in general, we're going through the system, you would have those notifications, you would say, hey, an asset we have is that alert notification system.
That's right,
Which is tentative right now, but at some
That's right.
point that would become,
a reality, right,
Yeah.
or should,
yeah, and then that would dovetail into a response. So.
that's right.
The response would be, once it's all rolling, you would be
Now-
able to send out a message.
Well, yeah, so if I'm at home and I have a CPAP machine or something, and I am dependent on power. I should have had my own emergency procedure for the first 3 days.
Mhm.
If I don't, who do I contact?
Mhm.
Right, they're probably gonna call the chief.
Yeah.
Right?
You can call the fire or. the police.
Right, they're gonna call 911, that's likely, say this is an emergency, my wife, husband, daughter, somebody has a CPAP machine or a. You know, something that
Yeah.
depends on this, not only, I've been alerted, the power's down for 3 days, I only have enough for one.
Mhm.
Right, so they go on the critical list,
Mhm.
right?
Okay, nice.
Um. And then, so the next one is assess hazards and damages. So, check the status of critical facilities. So here at the town, that's our emergency operations center. Do we have a generator? No, right? We have no power? What do we do?
Yeah.
I think budget wise,
Mhm.
that needs to be a priority, right? What happens if contact areas are not reporting in? Now, we talked about having a CERT coordinator be the lead of each zone. Right, so how many zones do we have total, Jeff?
I mean, yeah.
And how many zones?
Huh?
How many zones?
Let me look at the map first, I don't wanna give like a
Wrong number?
way off number,
Well, that's a number we should all know, right?
I've subdivided it. Where I have this. It's 7.
Okay, 7 zones. When you initiate the local emergency, that goes to you. You should notify your zone coordinators in the search.
Actually, this is, I'll get to that later. There's some procedure,
I don't care how to,
Right.
that's your business.
but
But you're gonna hear back, let's say you hear from 6 out of the 7. Your 7th coordinator is on vacation. You got nobody to cover that.
Mhm.
What do we do? So you've got to report back to Javier to say, I have a coordinator in every area but XYZ. Right? And then you two have to decide what you do about it. Now, this isn't perfect, right? We're just going through our own little tabletop exercise here. Right? But that's the first 4 hours. You want to, in the first 4 hours, you're beginning the response, you want to make sure, A, everybody's on alert, and B, that everybody's checked in and knows what's going on. So you have a status from you have a status from Chief Jenkins, Kersley, Carr, whomever is involved in that. But in general, all parties should be in sync in those first 4 hours. Unless it's all you know what breaks it. But still, we should still be in contact with one another. Okay, so assess hazards and damages, so you're gonna send the alert out to the partners, they're gonna check back with you on hazards and damages. I'm missing a coordinator here, we've got 3 medical people who have called in and need power, what do we do, okay? So this is in that first 4 hours. And part of your job is to inform everyone. All the ICS people, the leaders and responders, community members. So the church council, whoever's our rep, you're gonna say, hey, we're activated, just so you know, stay on alert. Okay, so that's the first 4 hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next tab in our chart is the first 12 hours. So in those first 4 hours, everybody's alerted, everybody's checked in, we have a base status. Now we prepare for a sustained response, right? Because it's been 12 hours. So let's see, in this, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 activities. So activate the team, it seems like that's redundant because in the first 4 hours, we've already activated our team. Right? So set the schedules, now this is interesting,
What'd you say?
set schedules.
Oh, that's the EOC meeting schedule.
Well, there's EOC meeting schedule, so you're gonna say, okay, we're now under sustained response, right? In the first 4 hours, everything may have cleared up.
Mhm.
But if it doesn't, then you can say, okay, now we're into a longer term response. I want to have a meeting twice daily, once in the morning, once in the evening, something like that, a check-in, right? So you're gonna establish meeting times for status reporting. Okay?
Mhm.
And then you're going to schedule workers so that they get rest. You're gonna be here, now you've been here, let's say, 12 to 24 hours, right? Monitoring the situation. You're gonna need to sleep.
Mhm.
Right? What happens and who takes over when you're sleeping?
Mhm.
Right? So you have to set the schedule. If Jam is helping, Jam needs to sleep. Is he able to go home? Do we need cots here? Who takes over for Jam if we don't have that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to set a schedule for everybody so that you're not working round the clock for 3 or 4 days with no sleep. Right? That's not productive. So that's what this second activity here is, to set schedules, status meetings, assessment, schedule, you know, people, the working parties, and track response costs for all the functions. Right, so if Jam needs a new
Tool.
yeah, the
Truck.
tool, but no. If he needs 6 extra snow shovels, let's say, then he has to go by and say, okay, give me the receipts, make sure everybody tracks the receipts. They come to the clerk or to you through a file, right? So set the schedules, address the shortfalls. If you don't have a zone coordinator in one of the zones, okay, who's the backup? So any missing pieces of the puzzle gets filled in.
I have a question, are we
Yes.
able to reword that part, because
Absolutely.
I'm at that, I contemplating zoning's bad, I was gonna go with that path.
It doesn't matter,
Right.
you're in control of that,
I know,
but we do have 7 zones that need representation.
but some of it's like,
So we talked about, so one of the things in Helene that was a problem is that 911 was getting calls for wellness check. I'm out of the area, my mother is on oxygen, I have not been able to
could set
get
a hotline.
over. What?
we could set a hotline.
We could,
Then
That would be
sure, I
awesome.
can have 1 man people come and run it.
but what happened is police department were too busy coordinating the
You can make
incident
lists, and
to do wellness check.
you can make a name list.
So they would call you to say, Jack, go do a wellness check on this resident, here's the address. You would look up the address, map it to the zone, and send out that coordinator to do the wellness check. You would then respond back, yes, everything's good, or no, we have an emergency. Then Javier's gonna work with the right emergency response team to prioritize that person. Depending on the issue, exactly. So you see how that's gonna go? Right, okay, so you're gonna address any of the gaps in the plan.
Okay.
Prepare the transportation route if we need to evacuate. We need to prioritize medical evacuations, like for this instance, we've done a wellness check, somebody needs help, there's a pregnant mother, she's in labor, we need to get her out, right? Continue any sheltering and evacuation. Update everyone through the status meetings. So those are the steps under 12 hours. Should we change any of those?
Probably were, but, I mean, let me sleep on it first, that's okay,
Well, you've got the template.
yeah,
Let's you and I have a private meeting to
Alright.
just do a draft. And then next meeting, we'll go through what we have as a draft. Okay? So Javier, you will just have to review our draft and we'll walk you through. But this is sort of the draft template, right? Your first tabs are gonna be in the red. All your contact, general ICS information, and what to do in the first 4 hours, 12 hours, 72 hours or whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna tab those and we're gonna have draft actions for you. Okay, so next meeting, what I'll do is bring those, Jack, let's set up some
Okay.
offline meetings for you and I,
Right.
we'll do a draft for Javi. And next meeting agenda is to go through the draft of just those tabs. Then what we'll do is Jack and I will start working on the incident specific tabs in the second section of the binder. And then we'll go through the same process for each one of those.
Alright.
Is that okay?
Yeah, seems good.
Make sense? Jack, you on board?
I'm alright.
Okay. At the end of this exercise, we should be able to have a draft of this printed. Right, we can then go through the whole thing, and I'd love to get one printed out just for grades.
I can do
Okay? And then the next phase will be to shop it around more broadly. So that's the general plan. Anybody else have any inputs,
I wanna,
concerns?
I wanna go through your circuit plan with this first, with the draft of your meeting about. I wanna make sure the circuit curriculum follows what you just talked about,
Okay.
cause that have to be very, very.
Yeah, no, your CERT organization has to mirror this, right? You
Yeah.
have to be set up by zones, you have to start identifying
that's right.
coordinators and zones and
Yeah.
stuff like
So it's
that.
more, it's gonna be more hassle doing the way you're thinking.
So, but if we look at Helene, that would have been a better response
Yeah.
than just help us
So
get.
also, sir, you know, also be trained as a, so Alma County has, when they originally had their CERT program, they have people running information. I think we established that, have an information line. And then have somebody take notes,
That's a great idea.
and then we type it in a spreadsheet. And it was the spreadsheet we share with all the section chiefs.
Yeah.
And the section chief would be able to divide who needs to, what's high priority, what's low priority, what's medium priority.
Well, and that's gonna go to Javi, and as the liaison, he's gonna make that determination.
No, be fire.
No, he's gonna figure out how to route that. You don't route directly, you report
I know,
to
that's what I
Javier,
think, we want spreadsheet should go to everyone, so they can see the pages.
you are gonna
And
go.
I'm saying, make it easier.
I understand, but you're gonna go to
I know,
Javier.
yeah.
Javier is gonna coordinate with everybody else. Javier is the liaison for the town. You work for Javier.
Yeah,
So you're gonna produce the spreadsheet. So CERT's gonna have a zone coordinator for each zone.
Right.
He pulls the trigger on a local emergency, you alert your zone
Mhm.
coordinators.
there needs to be team leaders.
I don't care what you call them.
Right.
Then. Emergency is activated. Okay, we have the hotline. Hotline number is gonna be available. If police get it, they're gonna give the hotline.
Yeah.
We can't attend to it right now, call this hotline. You've got a volunteer, sir, you or somebody else who's filling in a spreadsheet, so you have to think about that spreadsheet.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's
It gets filled in, date and time of call, who called, about what, about whom, then,
Mhm.
right? If you decide it's a critical emergency, all of that information goes to Javi.
Yeah.
And Javi's going to alert the appropriate
Partner,
partner
Mhm.
on what, they're gonna make the determination of how to triage and prioritize that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Chief Kersley, we've got a medical emergency at XYZ, wellness check in, check out, can you help respond, right? And then it's between you and Kersley or Chief Jenkins on how to do that.
Yeah.
All right, that's gonna be their responsibility, but your responsibility is to make sure Javier is updated. Javier will then coordinate with the rest of the local ICS.
Yeah, I think that's,
Partners.
especially from this structure, yeah, that makes sense.
The worst thing we can do is just have everybody trying to call everybody else. Right?
And then you don't get.
You're the main coordinator with the first responders. Right? That includes you as the CERT coordinator, all right? So you don't alert all those partners, everything comes back to Hub. And the other direction too, if Chief Jenkins needs CERT control or help, he shouldn't be going directly to you because he's bypassing our liaison. He should put in a request to Javi, and then Javi said, Jack, I need somebody to help direct traffic or evacuate people at Valley and Main at 6 o'clock per Chief Jenkins. Do you have somebody to come? If not, is there somebody else we can get, right?
Yeah.
Then that comes back to you to Chief. This way, everybody stays in the loop and coordinated. Otherwise, Javier's left out of the loop, and that's just not acceptable.
You're kind of flying past, yeah. I know where you're coming from, kind of flying past each other.
That's right. So the best thing we can do for each other in an emergency is make sure we go through chain of command. And that chain of command is outlined in the ICS structure.
Yeah.
You are the central figure in that. Okay. All right, so it's almost 4 o'clock. We have a plan, we have some actions, we have some follow-ups. So next meeting, we will regroup on these. You and, okay, you and I need to get meetings on the calendar, at least a couple of them before then. And they should probably be for 2 hours, Jeff, because this is real detailed down in the.
This will not be a phone call conversation.
No, it's in person here, and you and I are just gonna knock down drive.
So should we just like lock ourselves in here on Saturday?
Or it can be during the weekday, I don't care.
I think
Probably
Saturday's.
not on a Saturday, but
Huh?
not on a Saturday.
Why, that's, nobody can bother us, we can just knock all this stuff.
Nobody's gonna bother us,
Nobody's
nobody's
gonna
gonna
bother
bother
us
us.
here.
All right,
No big, yeah, so I just wanna make
so
sure.
as long as you're comfortable, we kind of have a sense for what's going on.
Fit in the next one and then. I see how this slowly can get to the point where like you have something that you can table topics for size out. And then you work out those